Well, coming up on today's show, Formula E returns with its first ever support series of pure electric racers. The Hyundai Kona gets its US pricing, and we answer your question of the week. Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to EV News Daily. It's a Sunday, if you're listening to this on the day it's published, the 16th of December. My name is Martyn Lee. I've been through every EV story I can find today. These are the ones I think you need to know about. Well, thank you as always to myev.com for helping make this show. It is the world's first marketplace for trading EVs, and it's a totally free marketplace to use to buy and sell, learn about EVs as well. I was reading the news earlier this week about the Volt being discontinued, and it reminded me that the Bolt, the Chevrolet Bolt, is a car that I don't talk about enough because we don't get it here in the UK, so I sort of forget about it, which is a bit unforgivable. So I was having a little surf around and looking at some of the really nice new Bolts on myev.com. Lovely car. Wish we could get it in the UK. Check out myev.com for all of the different EVs that you would be interested in. And welcome to another two members of the Patreon gang. I meant to say two, then messed it up, didn't I? Chew. Marvellous, that. Chew. Chew members of the Patreon gang. That'll be Callum Burnett. Oh, crikey. Callum Burnett and Stuart Hanna, both producers of the show. Thank you, Callum. Thank you, Stuart. It means a lot. And I'd like to know, actually, maybe I should email people when they support on Patreon to ask them specifically what made them sign up at $5 or $10, which is basically like $10 is like a posh coffee once a month. And I should ask people, look, if you've been listening to the podcast for a few days, a few weeks, a few months, what is it? What flicks that switch where you go, you know what, for $10 a month, I'm just gonna support the show and help spread the word and get the word out to more people around the world, because it really does help me expand, advertise the show a bit, spend more time on it, and I wonder what that is. I wonder what that kind of psychology of it makes people go, you know what, boom, today's the day. I'm just gonna do it now. Patreon.com/EVNewsDaily. Patreon.com/EVNewsDaily. I'm so grateful. Thank you very much. Antonio Felix da Costa won the Ad Diriyah E-Prix, the opening round of the ABB FIA Formula E Championship, and the first race for the new Generation 2 car, what has been dubbed the Batman-style car, mainly because of that enormous rear diffuser. According to motorsport.com, the reigning champion Jean-Eric Vergne finished second. He led the middle phase of the race, and then he was hit with a drive-through penalty for a technical infringement, which I didn't really understand. Jerome D'Ambrosio got the third place and the final place on the podium for Mahindra Racing. Things to work on then. The racing, spectacular. The cars, great. No car swaps now in Formula E. The coverage could be better. I know the team that put this together are a team of professionals. They have the highest of standards. I think they'll be disappointed with the coverage. The commentators were at times talking over themselves. I don't know if they could hear themselves. At times, well, at nearly all times, the commentators talked over the drivers. And one of the things that's great about Formula E in previous seasons is the open radio. And you get so much more of the drivers. And also, the kind of lack of graphics on screen to explain the new rules, things like the new attack mode, for instance. I didn't realise, and I'm well into this, I didn't realise that it was 4 minutes that you got it for. And so there are 4 little arrows on screen next to the driver's name, for instance, and then they go down per minute. But that wasn't explained until the very end of the race. And then I was hoping for more on-screen graphics that really explained what the driver was doing when they were on throttle, when they were braking, how much energy they had left, that battle between the drivers. This one's used 3% more of the battery, but it was really lacking. And that can be improved. That's the good thing, because it can be improved for the next race in the first odd week of June, second week of January, sorry. Whereas the actual racing, if that was a problem, that'd be a worry. The racing for Formula E, really, really good. They've got the specs right of the car, the design right. They can follow each other. They can overtake. Oh my goodness, it's going to be a great season. And for the very first time, they have a new support series in electric racing. According to motorsport.com, Simon Evans claimed victory in the first ever Jaguar I-Pace eTrophy. And he prevailed in a race-long three-way fight for the lead to make history, according to Andrew Vanderberg for Autosport Media. with qualifying having been rained off. The starting order was eventually decided by the free practice session that took place yesterday on Friday, and it meant that Evans was on pole. To compensate for the loss of track time, 3 additional sighting laps were allowed before the cars lined up for the start of the race. Much was made, by the way, of more female drivers, and that is both a great thing, and I'm disappointed that it's even sort of talked about as a thing. It should just be a thing. We should just have the best drivers, and if they happen to be man, woman, if you get a great 14 or 15-year-old who is just ridiculously quick for some sort of reason, if you get someone who has been driving all their life and, touring cars, they're in their mid-40s, it shouldn't really... This shouldn't be a talking point that there's more female drivers, that there's women driving in the Jaguar I-Pace series, in the eTrophy. It should just be like, they're great drivers. It shouldn't be they're drivers and they're a woman. It shouldn't even be a thing. But I suppose it was a talking point. It kind of annoys me because it shouldn't be. Just because they happen to be a great driver, they're a great driver. Anyway. And one of the hidden gems, if I may say, if that doesn't sound patronising, I mean it really genuinely, of the coverage was the presenter of the Jaguar support series, Amanda Stretton. A really good presenter, by the way. Looking forward to watching her this year. I think it helps when you have a presenter who's been a driver themselves and not just famous for being a famous TV presenter, if you know what I mean. That's not derogatory to anybody in particular, but she was brilliant and a really great host. So I'm looking forward to watching more of that Jaguar series as well. Those I-Paces, by the way, are almost stock cars. They have the 90 kilowatt hour battery. They have the same regen. Obviously, they're prepared for race, but I mean, they looked great. And right, moving on. Let's talk about the Hyundai Kona, and the US prices have now been revealed. Not that the demand of that car needs any more stimulus of that 64 kilowatt hour top end model of the Hyundai Kona, but the pricing in the USA is competitive, let's say that. If I say that it's affordable, I'll get people complaining that actually I live on a different planet and that this isn't an affordable car. But Hyundai had today announced the starting price for the Kona Electric is going to be $36,500 and an effective net price of $28,950 or $29,995 when you factor in delivery, with the tax credit of $7,500 factored in. Customers may receive the available federal tax credit of $7,500 and a perhaps state level incentive as well. If you just add the tax credit, it's sub $30,000. It can reduce it even more, say, if you're buying it in California. Pricing for the other Kona Electric trims, this is for the base level, by the way, will be announced shortly. And of course, I think a lot of people will want the top spec trim. The Kona Electric rides on the all-new CUV platform. It's Hyundai's first compact electric crossover for the US market. And the Kona Electric models will be produced in Korea and be available in the beginning of next year, which is days away, with eventual availability in California and those ZEV-focused states, ZEV, or ZEV, you would say, I guess, zero-emission vehicle-focused states in the western and northeastern regions of the US market. It's a car that has a long backlog here in the UK. At least last time I checked, it was 11 months waiting list. That may have come down. That was a few weeks ago that I last checked, and they are saying, though, that they will prioritise deliveries to the US market to feed the demand that is there. I'm not sure if prioritise is the right word, but they're aware of the demand and they want to satisfy it. Fingers crossed that happens. It would be nice to see them upping the supply a little bit, because the demand is definitely there. Well, according to Inside EV estimates, General Motors crossed the mark of 200,000 plug-in electric cars in the US before the end of November last month, 2018. The 200,000 sales is the magical number. It's not necessarily a good number, though. It triggers the phase-out, the gradual phase-out. Don't panic, it's not going completely, of the federal tax credit of $7,500. Even if not all customers applied for the tax credit, or if there are some delays between the sales and the tax credit tally, the 200,000 number will be this quarter. I'll put a link to Inside EVs in the show notes. Elon Musk is a legendary and visionary leader and engineer, and at times a bloody good salesman as well. He's been on Twitter and he says this: Tesla is releasing all vehicles for sale today, where original customers can't take delivery before end of year. Reminder to US buyers, the $7,500 tax credit drops in 2 weeks. Order online, tesla.com, or visit stores. So there's a couple of things happening there. Firstly, he is as overtly being a salesman as I ever see him, really, saying, look, you got 2 weeks, get your orders in. If you want a Tesla Model 3 and you hadn't ordered one now, we are making available any car that we can find anywhere. So maybe they've built a bunch of cars on a standard, or maybe they've built the most popular spec, for instance, thinking, we've got all these reservation holders, I bet a load of them are going to want this colour with 18-inch wheels with the mid-range pack, for instance. And they made, say, thousands of those, and then they couldn't maybe fill all of them with the reservation holders they had, because maybe the reservation holders are waiting for the cheaper one, or a black one. And so any stock they've got, that includes, I gather, fleet cars, demo cars, test drive cars. They are making them available. I'm not sure about discounts, by the way, but for those cars that have done mileage, but they're making them available in the next 2 weeks. If you want to get your Model 3 and you don't mind compromising on the spec that you would ideally want, if they've got a car somewhere and it's not necessarily matching up with the custom order from somebody else, they want to get it in your hands and a full tax credit applied to you. Final news story today, ChargePoint has been selected by Daimler to deploy charging solutions for their retailers in Germany, as Daimler prepares for a significant increase in electrified models in the coming years. The deal includes the deployment of AC and fast chargers up to 150 kilowatts at Daimler-owned properties, starting early next year and going on to the end of 2019. The charging solutions will be available for retailers of Mercedes-Benz cars and vans and trucks as well. Well, Daimler retailers across the country are increasingly investing ahead of their push into EVs in the coming years. Here we go with question of the week this week, and normally, you know, I always give credit to the person who sent the question in, but I'm aware that I'm already over 10 minutes into the podcast, and this has been the most popular question of the week we've already done. So just this 1 week only, I will leave off the names of the people who sent these in. I've also had to trim a few down, not based on any kind of... If I don't read yours out, it's not because the quality wasn't there. It was simply because it was just a timing thing, and we try and keep the podcast under 20 minutes for your sanity, and there's only so much of my voice you need. And so if we don't read yours out, then trust me, I have forwarded all of the questions of the week this week onto myev.com, and they will use that as they go into 2019, as they build out the research section of the website as a way of gauging what's on your mind. So I've read it, they will read it, even if I don't get a chance to put it publicly on the podcast. So we turned it round this week on Question of the Week, and I wanted to know what's on your mind. What is the question of the week that we should be asking next and into 2019? So here we go. Number 1, what are your desired realistic specs for a pure electric vehicle? Good question. Next one, where in the world did you last rent a car? Was an EV available? What service did you use? And would you like to have rented an EV, even if you paid extra for it? If you could convince the manufacturer to convert any currently made car to electric, what would it be? For current EV owners, now that you've owned an EV and live with range anxiety, if you could only charge level 2 at home, what do you feel is an acceptable EV range for your type of driving? Should Nissan have presented us, the consumers, with 2 choices straight out of the gate last year? The current 40 kilowatt hour version or the longer 60 kilowatt hour version at a higher price, and allowed us to make our own decision. If you could make one EV out of 3 EVs currently on the market, what would they be? I like that one. If you could have a level 3 charger in your home for an affordable price, would you even use or need that speed? What year do you think EVs will be the same or cheaper than a fossil car, and why? Why am I forced to either take out a monthly subscription or to buy and use a smartphone to be able to refuel an EV? How do we stop pump rage from becoming an established part of everyday life for EV drivers? There's someone who's angry. How do we engage women more on the topic of electric cars, as just like men, they have a huge impact on household purchasing decisions? That's a great question, by the way. I can see the stats for every single person that downloads this on places like YouTube, and I can tell you, the podcast has a male bias in terms of who listens to this show. More men than women do. So that's a very good point. Would you prefer free charging that is only open during business hours, or would you rather pay for 24/7? Have you joined or have you started a local EV club? Name a unique bonus feature that a pure EV offers that may not be obvious to most people. Of the people in your social circle, especially those who might buy a car, how many of them are aware of EVs? How do we give the growing population in cities that live in apartments a charging possibility in the near future? Most don't have a parking space or garage nearby, and rebuilding a city takes too long and too much investment. As the grid will get busier, as more and more EVs come into use, would people be willing to have storage batteries in their houses and garages fitted by their electricity supplier, who then takes control of their battery? When making a long drive by car, what typical duration do you feel comfortable to drive before taking a quick break? Is it 2 hours, 2.5 hours, 3 hours or more? Is it a different duration when you're by yourself versus with the family? And if you prefer to answer in distance, that's fine too. What's an acceptable break duration to reload a further driving stage? Given that even in a gas car, a break is 10 minutes, how long should a break be if you're charging an EV? What don't you need in an EV? What is the percentage of listeners to this podcast that own an EV? As EVs are still expensive, will you consider converting a fossil car to EV if it were available? And finally, those of us who were early adopters are always asked by friends and family about our experiences. So when asked about driving EV by someone considering the switch, what is the first and most important thing we should tell them? Thank you very much for all of your questions of the week. You know what? We're going to use a ton of those in future questions of the week. And it's so good to know what's on your mind. This bit of the podcast is all about you. Thousands of people around the world now listen to the podcast, which is just amazing, because I was looking back at earlier this week, actually, at February, March, April, actually. And you know what? Like 3 or 4 people listened to each episode of the podcast. And there were times, I must admit, that I thought, man, I'm doing a lot of this work for basically a few people listening. Well, I'm delighted to say that's changed. It's built, and it's all built really because you've been sharing it. So maybe you've been sharing it on Twitter or Facebook or email, or you just said to somebody you know who might be into EVs, hey, there's a podcast, and if you're interested, check it out. You might learn something, and you might want to take part in it as well. So thank you very much for everybody who's helped build the show in 2018. We've got a ton of stuff there to work on for 2019. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And if I didn't read yours out, it only means that I was just trying to keep this below 20 minutes. Thank you very much to myev.com for setting question of the week every week this year. I've been chatting away to them this week, and we've decided on the first one that we're going to go with was actually the first question that came in, because not only was it, very, very good, but also it's a great question to ask you. So here is your brand new question of the week. Get your answers in for next Sunday's show on email, on the comments, and anyway, I'll tell you how to do that after I've asked the question. What are your desired realistic specs for an electric car? And we're going to give you, to focus your mind, only 3 things that you are allowed to tell me what your specs are. Range, price, performance. I know there's lots more. I know there's loads more things that you judge a car on, size and all that kind of stuff. But for the purposes of this question of the week, what are your desired specs for a pure electric vehicle? What's needed? What's desirable? And what's realistic as well? Don't just go off into fantasy land. What's realistic? Range, price, and performance. I can tell your brain is already thinking about that, isn't it? You're already starting to go, right, well, I know what that would be. Well, look, have a think about it. Send me your answers. You can email me personally. It is hello@evnewsdaily.com. That's hello@evnewsdaily.com. You can go to myev.com, click on research just at the top, you'll see there, and then go down to question of the week, and then leave your comments on the discussion board there, or you can use the comments on YouTube or my own blog at evnewsdaily.com. There are now 137 patrons of the show. It bowls me over every time I say that. Thank you to Callum and Stuart for being our latest ones. Maybe your name will be the next name that I read out at patreon.com, patreon.com/EVNewsDaily. Thank you as always to the premium partner of this show. He not only supports this show in an incredibly generous way. It's Phil Roberts from Electric Future. That's ef.energy if you want to check out the big scale stuff that Phil does with solar and battery and lots more as well. But he's the premium partner of the show, and I learn a lot from him on Twitter, and you can follow him as well. It's Phil Roberts to look out for. Hello to our partners of the show, David Allen, OEM Audio of New Zealand, and evpower.co.nz, and Sasha Pallenberg as well, who is a constant source of inspiration, motivation for me. And the executive producers of the show, the list just keeps on growing. Alan Robson, who is at Scottish EV Owner on Twitter. Hello to Ashley Hill, Arid Gear Scalsveen. Hello to Bard Fuchstak. Hello to Bob Muir from gingercomputers.com in Dundee. Brian Weatherall, Cesar Trujillo, Chris Benson, Chris Hopkins, Darren Bird, David Partington, David Prescott, Damian Davis, Don McAllister of ScreencastsOnline.com. Yes, Don, the legend in the Apple world. Thank you, Don McAllister. Frederick Rovick, George Clargo, Jack Oakley, Jerry Allison, John Bailey, John H. Mayer III, John Timmis, Kevin Mayerson, Lars Dallager, Louis Hopkin, Luke Cully, Marcel Lohman, Marcel Ward, Maz Shah, Martin Croft, Matthew Ellis, Matthew Greby, Neil E. Roberts, and all the gang at Sussex EVs. Paul Stevenson, Paul Seeger-Smith, Philippe Calvet, Raj Bedwell, Renee Schneider, Rod James, Rupert Mitchell, Sarah McCann, Scott Callahan, and last but never least, the Limousine Line in Sydney. There are 327 episodes of this show online for free. If you'd like to download it, you can subscribe if you want to. Hit that subscribe button. It means you get it first before anybody else. And first and free and automatically as well. And you can catch up on the socials by searching EV News Daily. Have a wonderful day. I'll catch you for a brand new week tomorrow.